Welcome back to JKMoto Podcast, a weekly motorcycle podcast for the everyday motorcyclist, covering current bike news, specializing in track riding and club racing. We truly do it all. This week, brought to you by Working Class Customs, which is a custom fabrication shop out of northern Utah. And if you have any more questions on that, you can direct them to Cole.
That's me.
That's you. What are we doing this week, Cole?
We're having a fake spring. We're getting antsy to pull motorcycles out of the shop and go riding.
You know, I actually had a great weekend this past weekend for riding. I didn't ride, but I was doing the Facebook thing, and someone posted that they had their whole bike torn apart. They picked this past weekend, which was like up in the 70s and sunny, and then it started raining today, and they had their entire bike torn apart. Like, forks were off, all the fairings were gone. Yeah. So.
And is it outside?
No. He's just mad because the weather's nice, and he decided to do his bike tear down. It's like, you know, you get to the end of the winter and you're itching to ride, but you're also finally like, okay, I'm just going to do this project because it looks like it's going to be colder for longer. Then there's a groundhog, and it doesn't see a shadow or something too much.
The thing we already established, groundhog's lifespan is not that long.
We established that off screen. Anyway, I do have some news. We have another riding tip from your great friend Josh Bittinger over at Bittinger Motorsports. Once again, bringing you your weekly riding tip. Make sure you go check him out. Down in the description, we'll have a link to Bittinger Motorsports. So this week's riding tip from Josh is ride in the rain. Don't be afraid of rain sessions. View them as an opportunity rather than a hindrance. Wet sessions are a great time to practice smooth brake application, smoothly rolling out of the throttle, and smoothly applying body position or bar inputs. Remember to keep the bike upright and slowly test your limits of traction. Make sure you're running appropriate tires and pressures. Talk with your tire support specialist if you're unsure if you have the right gear, and approach rain riding with the right mindset. There's a ton to be learned, and you may even learn to love rain riding while everyone else cowers in the paddock. Ride in the rain from Josh Bittinger.
I hate riding in the rain.
Well, hey, you know, maybe you should also take these tips on board, Cole. Once again, that's from Josh Bittinger down at Bittinger Motorsports. Make sure you go check him out. He's down in the Texas area doing some great things. We're excited to have him supporting our channel. And I think, you know, you mentioned tires and tire pressures, and I think that's kind of a great
segue.
It is into what we're getting into. We got another guest.
Super excited. We can learn some things. I need to learn some things. I'm excited to talk to him about some tire-related subjects.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, we'll introduce him after the intro. But tires are something we're all constantly dealing with. We're all constantly talking about. Never more than on a motorcycle track, because you go through them so fast, unfortunately. And pressures are so important, and some of that's the longevity and when to take them off. And I'm ready to get into all that.
Awesome. I agree. Let's roll the intro, and we'll get our guest on.
Yesterday at one point, I was in sixth. 153 miles an hour.
Hey, welcome back to the show.
Welcome,
Chris Hamlett. This is Chris Hamlett, the Pirelli dealer for, let me get this right, South Central United States, correct?
Correct. So my region is Texas, Oklahoma, Arkansas, Louisiana, which is a pretty big region for a lot of miles.
Yeah, that's pretty big. That's a lot of travel. Well, Chris, not to let everyone in on the secret, but we might have had some technical issues. So what how did you phrase that question, Cole?
So you're obviously the Pirelli guy now, and you're into motorcycles, but how did you get here? How did you get into motorcycles?
What started it all?
Some bad luck, honestly. Yeah, or misfortune, if you will. I grew up in the four-wheel realm. So I don't know how old I was when I started racing cars, but it's been a long time. Didn't know anything about motorcycle racing or track days, you know, back during those years. And I had bikes, you know, I guess probably from the time I was 14, 15, started riding on the street, doing all the hooligan stuff like a lot of people do, you know, especially in Houston. We have a lot of open highways, and, you know, just had some misfortune in '05. Lost a good friend of mine on the street. And, you know, I think with anybody, you know, kind of messed my head up a little bit. And then I, in turn, had a bad accident later that year and messed myself up. Not on a bike, but in the car. You know, it kind of took me out of everything for a while. You know, stopped racing, obviously, for a little while, and the bike stuff. I sold all the bikes, got rid of all the street bikes, and it just is what it is, right? Some time goes by. You know, financially we were doing okay, and I got the itch. You know, I think once you get on two wheels, at some point in time, you never really get. That never really leaves your system. I hopped on a bike, and I think I rode it twice. Did a couple of meets, and my head I couldn't do it. I was nervous, tense, and at that point in time, I was old enough to know that that's not the way you ride a motorcycle. You know, that just could lead to more bad stuff, right? And made some phone calls, and the next thing you know, I was throwing the bike and dog in the truck and trailer, and ended up here at Ducati Austin, and I met a guy an ex-pro racer by the name of Jeff Nash, and super nice guy. He got me outfitted with a proper fitting helmet. I thought that was pretty interesting, and suit, gloves, and all the gear. And he gives me a little Post-it note, and he's like, "Hey, meet me at this address tomorrow morning at 8 a.m." So we do that, and it was a racetrack, and it was a Crescent, MS Motorsport Ranch Crescent, I think, which is a little south of Fort Worth. And that was my first experience with a motorcycle on a track. Had no idea what I was doing, but, you know, Jeff, there was I think 4 or 5 of us.
What was the bike?
I was on a Ducati at the time, and that was the only reason that Jeff allowed me to participate. Because I was one of his customers, you know. So he would do that. I don't know if he still does it or not. I hadn't seen Jeff in a while, but, you know, back then he would do that. Every so often he would just rent the track and have 4 or 5 customers, and just, you know, do kind of like a private track day. Obviously, it was a little bit of an expense back in the day, and you know, I showed up at the track. And Jeff drug me around, and like I said, I got back, and I remember dragging my knee for the first time on Sunday. I thought that was stupid exciting, right? And I laid the suit out on the kitchen floor, and I took photos of it, and I posted it on Facebook, and I was like, "I'm Valentino Rossi." Well, the ironic thing is, nobody that I was friends with on Facebook knew anything about motorcycles either, because we were all car guys, and so everybody was like, "Huh?" So yeah, my excitement was short lived. But
so that's your first track day, and then, you know, from there, where did we go?
Continued to do some more track days. Kind of fell in love with it, and so you know, I was kind of one of those ones that followed the Ride Smart circuit. So it was one of our track day organizations in the Texas area, the region, and they did a lot of events. You know, we have pretty solid weather around here year round, so I had the opportunity to really kind of just get going. And I remember we were at TWS one time. A guy that I didn't know who he was at the time, but he hit me on the track, ran me off the road, and came and found me later. And he was apologizing and stuff like that, and that's kind of how we met. And he turned out, we became pretty good friends after that. And a few more track days after that, we were driving home, I think, from the Dallas area, because back then we lived in Houston. And we were talking to each other on the phone as we were driving, because it was 2 a.m. And he's like, "Man, you should get your race license." I'm like, "My what?" I had no idea. And so he kind of walked me through that process. And next thing you know, it was I had got my provisional license with CMRA. And my very first event that I showed up to, that same gentleman had brought in some guys from Florida that were pro guys, and they were on the team to do the endurance, because we did big bike endurance back then. Got to know that guy pretty well, you know, had a good weekend, And we ended up going to dinner, and he was like, "Well, what's your plans?" And I'm like, "What do you mean, what is my plans?" I was like, "It's my first race ever." I was like, "I don't know." I was like, "I'm just here to have fun." And he's like, "No, no." He's like, "I watched you ride." He's like, "No, you're a competitor, you know." And I don't know, long story short, I ended up not participating much in CMRA that year. I ended up going to Wira and riding with those guys for a couple of years when I first started. And eventually made my way back to Texas. And I've been with CMRA, I think, since 2010, 2011, something like that. So
Okay.
it's been a while. Still participate with Wira events. I still like to go to Road Atlanta and Barber and a couple of those tracks. And, you know, done a couple of CCS rounds and, you know, whatever, Pan Am. So I like to travel. So.
Sweet. Well, we're kind of.
You got a bus.
Yeah.
Yeah. Bus in a big trailer. I can't tell you how long it is because it may or may not be illegal. I don't know. So.
Yeah. We ain't got to get into that.
Yeah.
So,
where
was I? I had a thought. Sorry, thought left my head. Anyway, Pirelli shirt, Pirelli hat, Pirelli. Is it always Pirelli? Have you been somewhere else? What else have you tried?
I have been. Yeah. When I started, you know, I guess like I said, 2010. The guys over in, particularly on the eastern side of stuff in Florida and everything, it was big Dunlop country. And to be honest with you, I was gone for the first couple of years, so I really didn't know what the correlation with as far as like what we now call grid share, right? You know, how many of the group is on this brand, that brand, and whatever. You know, so I started on Dunlop and kind of broke my teeth with that. And once I made my way back to Texas, I met the previous owner of the business I bought last year, John Hutchinson. And, you know, he'd been building the Pirelli brand in this region for, you know, I think he had it for about 18 years when I bought it. And I bought my first set of Pirelli tires from him at a Ride Smart track day all those years ago. And, you know, I kind of like the tire, but you know, I'll be honest with you, I'm still kind of that racer mentality, and I was never a very wealthy person, so you know, I get the gist of, you know, we kind of do what we have to do, right, as far as budget wise and stuff like that, and things are constantly changing. And you know, there was a point in time where I was running with Bridgestone. John also did Bridgestone many years ago, and the contingency was good, and I was, you know, on the box consistently, so you know, it was the better option, you know, budgetary wise. You know, but as things progress, these bikes have gotten way more advanced. So much more power than even when I started. It's crazy, and you know, I think Pirelli has done a good job at keeping up. And you know, they're all great tires. You know, I think if you spend more time working on your bike and getting your geometry and your setup right and focus on what you're doing and particularly pay attention to air pressures no matter what brand you're on. I think that those are key things that so many guys at the track day level and the club level overlook as far as, you know, how that tire performs and what it's going to provide for you as far as grip. And you know, that's something that I've been trying to focus on this year as I've taken over, is really be more educational and provide that. You know, if you think about it, you've got what, I don't know, inch and a half. You know, when you're leaned over. So yeah, you know, not enough rubber, not a lot of rubber on the track surface, and that's the one contact point that's saving your butt. You know, it's saving your butt, saving somebody else's butt, saving your motorcycle. So you know, I really press upon, no matter where you're at, no matter what level you're at, no matter what brand you're at, trying to get guys starting to pay attention to the technical aspect of tires. And you know, I promote tire warmers a lot. You know, and I think those are critical. You know, that's kind of where it's developed to. And I think having the experience over so long and riding various brands, you know, I think helps.
Yeah. So, I mean, I'll be honest with you. You're talking to a couple of Dunlop guys. We're not like sponsored by Dunlop or anything, but that's just kind of where we started and where we've stuck to.
Sure.
So we're not, as stated earlier, we're not here to have a brand battle today. I think we're just looking to hopefully learn more from you for our input and to put out to the world. Can you break down for me real quick the options. If I go to Pirelli, as far as like, we'll keep it track day and racing level. So DOT track day tire, and then all the way up through the slicks.
Okay, so how do I want to preface this? Because I want to put the correct information out there. So let me start by giving a little tidbit of technical knowledge, and then we'll get into the breakdown. Is that okay?
Sounds great.
Sounds good.
Okay. All right. So if you pay attention to MotoGP, World Superbike, or any of the professional stuff, usually at the start of the race, they'll tell you they're running a soft, medium, hard compound, whether it's front or rear, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. I get asked, and I was guilty of it when I first started doing this too, you know, I just want the stickiest compound you got.
Right. I
well,
that
is yeah. So let me break that myth. That is a falsity by all aspects, no matter what brand you ride. Every compound, you have rubber and you have a chemical that's injected to the rubber.
Mm-hmm.
So when that chemical gets hot, it breaks down the rubber, and that's what makes it sticky.
Okay.
So every compound has a different chemical agent in it, which requires either more or less heat to break the rubber down and make it sticky. So in our case with Pirelli, we have compounds that go as obviously down as low as a qualifier, and our hardest compound is going to be a 3. And they're just numeric order, 0, 1, 2, 3. And with every, you know, the softer the compound, the variance in the temperature range in which that tire operates at its maximum efficiency as far as grip level. So you have a lot of things that coincide, that come into play with it. First and foremost, track temperature, ambient temperature. Is it hot outside? Is it cold outside? Right?
Mm-hmm.
If it's hot outside, then that tire is going to stay hot. It's going to get hot pretty quick, and it's going to remain hot while you're on the track. Next is air pressures. More or less will vary how that tire builds heat or doesn't build heat as you're riding. And lastly is just overall performance of the rider. You know, the faster a particular rider is, obviously he's braking harder, he's accelerating harder, he's transferring energy. So every time there's an energy transfer, that builds heat.
Right.
You know, so all of those things kind of coincide with you know, a particular compound that might be the right option for you any given weekend. Now, mostly, you know, if we're talking about our track day guys, probably 80% of them are going to go out on a 3, just because they are a little bit more durable. Their heat range, the way they heat cycle is, you know, a lot easier. You know, that's a compound that we can also run without having tire warmers. They heat up really quick, like a traditional street tire. So they're a little safer. You know, once you get into the other ones, it's just, I personally take them on kind of a case by case basis, you know, and it's not just with brand. You know, I have gentlemen that come to me, and ladies too, you know, we accept everything. So, you know, if you come to me on a Bridgestone or a Dunlop or Shinko, you know, I'm going to do my best to do the researching. And obviously I know more about my own personal tire, right? But I don't shy away from any of them. I'm going to try to provide you the best knowledge that I can about whatever brand you're running. And they are different. You know, the pressures that we run with Pirelli are not the same as what the guys at Dunlop run. Yeah, I'm pretty good friends with the previous Dunlop vendor here in our region too. We've raced against each other for years. You know, he's been at the pro level a lot, so you know, fast guy, has some track records in his day, and you know, we talk tire talk. You know, and I try to pick his brain about the other brands that, you know, that he sold, because you know, obviously I see a lot of it. You know, so you know, the goal is to make sure everybody's as safe and get the best performance out of it.
Yeah, so I think we might have talked about that earlier, but so you're a Pirelli guy, and what you're saying is that in the motorcycle community on a racetrack, if I come over to you, no matter what I'm running, the goal is to keep me safe.
Absolutely.
basically, right?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah. So I mean, you would think that I would probably shy away from that. I think in the past, at least from my experience, there was a lot of and I hope my bosses, if they do happen to see this, hopefully I don't get in trouble for it. But it is what it is. I'm just an honest guy. There were times where there was a lot of animosity between this brand and that brand as far as the human side of it, the particular
Right.
vendors, right? Um, I don't believe in that. My whole goal is to be around the sport and the people that I love. I've unfortunately had experiences where we've lost some friends over the years, and I can tell you that's maybe you guys have experienced it as well, but it's a gut wrenching experience, and for me, safety comes first. I'm still competitive, and because I love the community, I think if the sport succeeds, then it's a trickle down effect. If people are riding and people are competing, doing track days, and are racing, then they're buying tires. You
Right.
can't help it. It's a consumable item, and it
Hmm.
is probably the most expensive item that we use in our sport. So there's times, I mean, I've literally gone out to a track this past year with me and two other riders and spent thousands of dollars and, track time and tires. And, we did testing because that was a track I knew we were going to, that there had been problems with a lot of tire tear. And I just didn't believe in that. Like, I believe that there's things that you can do to help compensate it. I don't buy into it. Well, it's a fresh surface and it's rough and all that. That's all true. But I think if you're willing to put in the time, you can find a way to make any particular tire work, at any given track. It's the hard part is putting in the time, you know.
Yeah.
Uh,
So just to kind of pause there, you said tire tear. I'll be honest, like maybe I've said already, I don't know, but I've kind of scratched the surface of tires. The chemical thing you were talking about, kind of I've heard that before. I've heard tire tear before. I've seen tire wear. You can find video after video after video of like, hey, does this wear look right? What is the actual difference between normal wear on a tire and a tire tearing?
I mean, obviously, anybody that when we're talking about competition tires, it's going to be pretty noticeable, right? And generally, from a visual standpoint, most tracks kind of lean heavier to one, either left hand turns or right hand turns, right? So
Hmm.
usually you can see from one side of a tire to the other side and kind of gauge what the difference is. So if you look at them and go, the wear, what I'm seeing visually is pretty uniform across the whole entire tire, more than likely that's what I would consider normal wear, right?
Okay.
Now, if you start getting into where it looks like knife edges and sometimes even chunking on one side versus the other, we have two different types of tear. You either have typically a hot tear or a cold tear. So a lot of that goes back to what I just said earlier when you're talking about compound selections and everything. It's not just give me the stickiest tire. It's literally there's science behind it. These companies make, I don't know, I'm sure millions of dollars, and spend millions of dollars in research. Dunlop, Bridgestone, Pirelli. I mean, all across the world, from World Superbike, MotoGP, Formula One. This is all stuff that in their mind, we're building something to compete. So they have specific specifications on what's going to maximize, right?
Hmm.
So simple, real simple. You put a rain tire on. The biggest thing about rain tires is they work great in the rain. You get a dry line. What's the first thing everybody does? They come in and change tires. Rain tires, you can't get really that hot. They're designed to operate in the wet, which keeps them cool. As
Hmm.
soon as you get them hot, they get greasy, slick. It's about the equivalent of riding a slick in the rain.
Interesting. Okay.
It's one extreme to the other. Point being, they operate in a certain temperature.
Hmm.
And obviously that temperature in the wet is significantly cooler than what we would have in the dry and on slicks. Our average operating temperature on a normal day in Texas say if it's ambient 90 plus, my tire temps are probably 180 to 190 surface. I use a probe, so I get down to try to check the tire more in the core of it, and we're, whatever that is, right? So obviously if you're out on a cold day, you're probably not going to get 180. The goal is to try to select the proper tire and compound that works in the range that you're operating in. We can't affect the weather, but we can make a tire compound choice that's more suited for what our application is. And I think so many people, and I've seen it for years and years and years, they miss the boat on that. They buy either they buy what's available, or they buy what their friends buy, or they buy what they've heard on the internet. Dunlop is the same. Dunlop, you guys know, you have compounds. You can get a 0129 or a 0057, and I've been around long enough to know what the Dunlop compounds are. And now I guess we're at an R3, R5, R7, R8, right?
Yep. That is the new one.
Yeah. Yeah, and those tires are the same. All of them are the same. Every person or every company that makes a tire, they do it with a specific purpose. And they do testing and like I said earlier, it's all a scientific thing to give you the performance for what you're trying to do. I think a lot of people will watch them, particularly World Superbike on our world and the Pirelli world, just because WSBK is a spec tire, right? Just like Moto A is with Dunlop. And so they'll just look at hard, medium, soft, and all that kind of stuff. And then we get over here and they want to try to buy the same tire that the guys are running in WSBK, which is for rears is primarily X's and zeros. But what the people here don't realize, we're in Texas in the summer. I mean, we had 2 race rounds this weekend where ambient temperature was 105. Track temp was 150 plus, and I'm talking to guys at Pirelli, and they're like, we don't have no data on anything like that. In Europe they take a summer break. So, and even MotoGP, you go to Qatar and they race at night. I think probably the hottest place that MotoGP ever goes is going to be, and they just went there for the first time in years, is Indonesia. And they had a horrible time. So there's a lot of science behind this. I don't just sell black rubber donuts. And I think it comes from me being still racing. It's like the sport. I love the sport, man. I love the fact that you guys are on here reaching out to a guy in Texas, and you guys too, I think, are, from what you told me, are halfway across the country from each other, right?
That is correct.
Most of the way across the country.
Yeah, just about.
Yeah, most of the way.
So
I'll go ahead, Cole. I just hear your question again.
Yeah, let me dig in a little bit more. So let me start with the first question, which will lead into the second question.
Okay.
So how fast, or fast is maybe not the right word, what kind of abilities on a club racer, or let's just say a track day, somebody that's going to the track, they're doing track days and they haven't switched over to a slick yet. They're still running a DOT.
Now, go ahead. Sorry.
What is the point that you think it's beneficial for somebody doing track days to step up to a full slick?
There's a couple of things that go into that question. So first, when we talk about a DOT, there is a differentiation. First and foremost, you have a true, what we call a street tire. So in our brand, it's going to be like the Rosa lineup, or then the next step would be like the Rosa Corsas, right? Mm-hmm. But those are still, the construction is way different. They're not, they give great performance at a track day. I still turn pretty daggum good lap times on a Pirelli quote unquote street tire. DOT is just Department of Transportation, right?
Right.
So the separation, what makes a tire DOT legal is if it has sipes in it to propel water in the event you had to ride on a highway where there was water, and puddling, right? So now when it comes to our particular tires, I'm not sure about Dunlops anymore, because I know they, last year we got this new compound, right? So I haven't really kind of delved into what their options are as far as what we call a DOT. So a DOT for me is still an SC3 compound, which is the hardest compound that Pirelli makes. However, they also make that same slick, and then they'll just cut sipes in it to make it DOT legal.
Okay.
So technically, I still have a very high performance option for track day guys, and it is different than the softer compounds in the fact that the carcass construction is a little different. Everything about it's a little bit different. It's a very high performance tire. We still race on them if the conditions meet the necessary requirements, but they heat up a lot faster. For the track day guys, it gives them an option that gives them a more performance oriented track tire that is still legal for them to ride on the street if they do some street riding. Now, I think more to your point, what you're trying to kind of question is, at what point should a track day rider consider getting off a street tire and move more to a track performance tire?
Yeah, that's fair. That's a better way of asking it.
Okay. So my answer to that is, first and foremost, I'm going to literally, there's two parts to it. Reality is most track day riders don't have the skill set or the bike set up to outperform the street tires they're on.
That's me.
That's reality.
It's true.
So it's all kind of like a humble pie. If you're willing to look yourself in the mirror, because we're 9 times out of 10, we're talking about budget. That's the biggest restraint in this sport. How much money can I afford? Track days are expensive now. Bikes are expensive. Everything's expensive now. Fuel's expensive now, right? So if I was even though I was an average track day rider and I don't ride too much on the street anymore, I would look myself in the mirror, and I know everybody's going to kill me for saying this because it's going to hurt my business. But I would look myself in the mirror and I say, if I do a fair amount of track days throughout the year on a street tire, I'm going to get more wear out of it. It's the construction's different, the rubber, everything about those tires is different. So they're designed to go further mileage down the road, right? As an OEM tire, but they're still great on the track. I mean, these, it's kind of like the bikes themselves. You go by any given super bike or sport bike, even at the race level, we don't do much to it. Put suspension on it and maybe some exhaust and tune it, and they got way more horsepower than we can use anyway. Than most of us can use. Then the other side of it comes to, what's my goal at a track day? Am I an avid track day rider? Do I realistically do way more track days than I do riding on the street? Am I falling in love with this sport from a track orientation, sense? If that's the category you find yourself into, then I would say, why waste the time? Because the more you ride on the track, going faster is a byproduct of being comfortable on the motorcycle.
Right.
And the more you do it, the more comfortable you feel going into the turn. You get more seat time on the brakes and the throttle. It's just repetition, right? So there's a lot of that going on. If you're an average track day rider and you don't really ride much on the street at all, don't wait. There's no point in it. You're not, you make the changeover, and I couldn't tell you how many times once somebody goes from a street tire to either our SC3 DOT or to our softer compound slicks, the result is the same. They always come back and say, man, I should have done this a long time ago. It's really, and I don't care what brand you're on. It's like the way that the tires are constructed and the performance that they give and the feeling that they give compared to a street tire, it's night and day. I mean, it's immediately noticeable. So, that's kind of two categories that I would just ask myself. I look myself in the mirror. If I don't do a whole lot of track days, stay with the street stuff. You're probably not going to be able to outride it. But if you're an average track day guy, don't waste your time. Just make the jump. Because it's only going to help you get faster, quicker.
So, on that though, if I go to Slicks, you said you're a tire warmer promoter. Then I got to get tire warmers. I got to get stands. If I don't know how to put my bike on stands, I got to bring a friend to do it for me. Or I got to figure out how to get my bike on stands by myself all the time. That's like, and then a generator, if the track doesn't have power, fuel for the generator. So is that trade-off worth it?
You want my honest answer?
Yeah.
If you can't afford it, you picked the wrong sport. That's my honest answer.
There's the actual truth. All right.
That's the actual literal truth, right?
Yeah.
Like there's no way to shake this. This sport is expensive, man. I mean, just an average. When I started out, man, I think I went through 4 or 5 motorcycles my novice year. I would wreck one, I'd just go buy another one. I'd buy a used track bike out anywhere. And at the time, I was on Suzuki, so I was on Gixxer 600. And man, I think I bought 2 at a racetrack on a given race weekend because I did something to mine. I would just buy another bike for like $4,000, swap everything over. Those days are gone. Tires back then you could probably get, I think, we won't count those Dunlop UKs that I started on because they were still expensive even 15 years ago, but they were a great tire. Tires. Fortunately, tires really haven't increased that much. If and I'll go over that in a minute. But everything's expensive, man. So, like I said, it kind of goes back. What I tried to educate people on, and I made a huge mistake when I started out in the sport. I didn't have anybody giving me this information. I didn't have anybody saying, "Hey, Hamlett, take a beat, man. Take a beat. Like you don't need to blow all of this for a novice year." How long do you want to foresee yourself being in the sport? So if you foresee yourself loving this and, 2, 3, 4, 5 years or longer, like there's nothing wrong with budgeting yourself. And, to be honest with you, that was a huge downfall for me. By the time I got really a lot better than what I was at when I started, I could barely afford to race anymore because I blew everything at the beginning. There is the thing about the generators and the tire warmers and the fuel. But here's what my other answer is to that. The worst thing you can do to a tire is heat cycle it.
Okay.
So a heat cycle, at least in our world, is probably anything more than a 55-degree temperature swing. So if you're a track day guy and you do on average 6 sessions a day, and you put a brand new set of tires on, by the end of that day, you've heat cycled that tire 6 times. So I don't care how good it looked, that chemical that we talked about earlier, over time, every heat cycle, it degrades. And it doesn't break the rubber down. And you've probably seen over time or heard stories about somebody that had a tire on their bike been sitting in the garage 3 or 4 years, and they drug it out and went and rode it, bam.
Yep.
And they said, the tires look great.
Yep.
Science. The beauty of, there's a misconception about tire warmer usage that we only use them because we want the tires heated up immediately as we go onto the track. Now that's true. It is a safety issue, but the reality is that's a byproduct. The main reason why we use tire warmers is because if I buy the same set of tires at the beginning of that track day, and I use tire warmers all day, I've only heat cycled them 1 time. They don't heat cycle until your end of the day. And I'm not familiar with, how your organizations run up there, but, the bulk of our track days are double days, so we get quite a few guys that do Saturday and Sunday to try to take the most of their off time. Right. So they did the same 6 sessions a day. That's 12 heat cycles on a brand new set of tires. By the time they come back, those tires ain't that great anymore.
Right.
Are they going to flip you on your lid? There's a possibility. And that's just the honest truth. And, you think about your generator purchase, your tire stand purchase, your tire warmer purchase. Those are one-time purchases. Generally, if you take care of them, I've got a set of tire warmers I've had for over a decade. So
what brand are those, if I can ask?
KLS.
Interesting. I've run KLS.
Because I'm rough on tire warmers.
I love the KLS. I mean, it's a European brand. It's what most of all of the professional teams in Europe run. They obviously, for them, money's no object, so that's kind of says something. That's their choice. Right. The construction is phenomenal. Like they're way more durable. Way more durable. The outer shell and all the stuff is made of Nomex, so it doesn't burn. It's the same material that they use to make astronaut suits. The inner, now I run the Pro Series stuff. Most of your tire warmers have windings, right?
Right.
heating elements. So the ones that I run, all of that interior is carbon fiber matte. So there are no hot spots on the tire. And very simple. You don't have to deal with a bunch of plugs. You just plug them in, high or low. Easy enough. They've got 2 sensors in them. One reads the external temperature of the tire. The other one actually reads the rim temperature.
Wow.
So their technology is all based upon rim temperature. And, if we get into a lot of other technical type of stuff, like for my fast guys, I don't just go with a temp gun. And, we have other things that we base our settings and stuff on, if you will. I don't want to give away too much, but it
I
can get a lot
thought
more
you said this was a
technical.
family sport. You're supposed to share all the info.
Yeah. Well, and it's funny, obviously I said earlier, that's what I fell in love with. And I think most of us divulge just about anything, but there are, when we're talking about now that it's my business, not just competitive anymore, I wasn't making money really when I was racing. I was just doing it for the love of the sport. Now this is my business, and I have, championship riders that I support and stuff like that. And, we do our testing, and there's certain things that we do to try to get data, if you will. It's just data. That's all it is.
Yeah. No, we're not actually going to ask you for any secrets. I understand. We actually kind of have talked before about how maybe there are people that are not quite secretive enough with their info.
Yeah, I think, man, that's been going on since the dawn of the internet, right?
Yep.
And it doesn't matter where you're at. It's anybody can post anything. And the sad part about it is it can spread like wildfire. But what I never really saw is people with the correct information, refuting it, and saying, hey, I seen this post and that's absolute garbage. This is not, everything that I'm telling you right now is not hearsay. This is all direct data information that either I've learned through experience over racing for so many years, or because I am a Pirelli vendor, and I have access. I talk to my engineers and stuff like that, and they give me all of this information. I'm not a rocket science by any means. So it's all of the stuff that I do is just straight from people that know way more than I do. So,
So you mentioned a minute ago a bike, sitting in the garage for 8 years, and somebody brings it out and the tire's garbage. What do you know about cold weather damage on tires?
So if I'm assuming you're talking about the term what we call cold tear, correct?
No,
or just damaging where it's cracking in cold weather.
So I'm in Utah.
Right.
Talking about storage over the winter, but an actual winter.
I'm in the midst of winter. It's not been so bad this year, but it gets cold here. And every year at the end of the year, I'm trying to burn up the rest of my tires because I'm going to store them. Mama won't let me leave them in the house, so I got to have them out in the non-heated shop. So if I have a pair of slicks that are, say, brand new that I didn't get to, what's the danger of ruining them if it's 20 below for 2 months?
I mean, you're talking about 20 below ambient temperature outside. What's the temperature in the shop? I mean, I know it's not climate controlled, it's not heated, but obviously without the wind chill, and so is it still that pretty direct correlation between outside temperature and okay?
I mean, I'm exaggerating a little bit. Let's say it hovers around 0 for
a week.
Okay, zero's not horrible, right? That's right around the freezing mark. So the first thing that I would do in your situation or anybody else that's in a similar situation, the least expensive way to do it is take the wheels off the bike and wrap them in blankets, something heavy that can at least offset some of that chill factor. Once they get below freezing, that could be an issue, not necessarily with the chemical compound, but with just the rubber itself. You can start getting dry cracks and things of that nature. And I think that probably goes for any tire, unless it's like a purpose-built snow tire or something. It's probably designed compound-wise and construction to deal with the cold a little better. Obviously, everything that we're running on the track was not designed for cold. You know, it's designed to operate at 150 plus degrees once it gets on the track. Beg mama. You know, if you can find a closet to put them in, is obviously the best thing you can do. Depending on how long your winter months is, and you know, I'll go back to budgetary stuff. You know, I look at numbers and stuff. If it's, you know, if I could go get a climate controlled storage, you know, they're month to month. You don't have to sign a contract. If I get a climate controlled storage, it's not that far from me for $100, $150 a month. That's cheaper than buying new tires.
Right.
You know, and it sounds crazy, but if you put pen to pad, it's less expensive. You know, so there's things that you can do. You know, tire warmers are also, if you end up with a set of tire warmers, I'll just wrap them. You know, I leave the warmers on. I don't plug them in, but you know, just anything that you can kind of do to offset it. And if it gets that cold for that long, I would just buy a new set when you start riding again, man. I mean, I know nobody likes to hear that because it's an expenditure that they don't, you know, it's like we pay for something, we want to get our use out of it.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I think that's the bulk of everybody that is in this world. But dude, really, is $400 worth, you know, in my case, $100,000+ hospital bills, you know, least case scenario, bike damage, you know, what's a set of fairings cost nowadays? Then you put plastics and decals and stuff back on it, you know, clip-ons, rear sets, all of that stuff. If you damage it, it's well more than the cost of a set of tires.
Right.
Yeah. So,
yeah.
And that's just the bike. We're not even talking about you. Leathers, helmet.
It's a hard truth, but hard to argue with you too, I guess.
Yeah.
You know, after putting it in the right words there.
It is, and I think that I'm hoping to try to get that, you know, continue to, I don't know, hound on the message. I mean, like I said, man, I come from humble means, and I've never made a lot, right? You know, but so I get the budget, and I get it's an expense, you know. But after doing it so long, the words I'm speaking right now just come from, I've done it everybody else's way when I got into the sport, and I look back on it now. I spent 100 times more, and we're talking thousands, 6 figures,
right?
Yeah,
easily, right? Between damaged motorcycles, damaged helmets, damaged leathers, boots, gloves, myself included. If I'd have just put on a new set of tires, you know, or at least a rear, you know, something. It's just not worth it, man. Just
hey, Ethan.
Yeah,
I got a pair of brand new slicks. I'll sell you half off.
He might be able to use them.
How cold are they?
Yeah.
Well, hey, let's drop that topic. If it's cold where you're from, bring your tires inside. If you're cold, they're cold. Bring the tires inside. I think that kind of sums that up.
That's a good way to look at it. If you can't stand to be outside where your tires are at, it's probably good that you just bring them.
Tires are like dogs, right? You know.
Yes. Yeah.
Anyway, I wanted to talk to you about pressure.
Okay.
And you've mentioned you're a data guy. I appreciate that because I like data a lot. That's my brain's always doing graphs and numbers and all that. That's how I see things well, right? So how much change, and then this might just be a dumb question to begin with, but this is how I'm going to ask it anyway. How much change in tire performance does 1 pound of pressure difference make?
A lot.
Okay.
No, nobody wants to believe that. But the truth is 1 PSI is extreme on especially on a tire that's that small. And here's an example that I will give that, at least in the United States, a lot of people probably are familiar with if you've ever watched NASCAR. Mm-hmm. You know, they come into the pits and they did a pretty good job with their telecasts and stuff, where the announcers would kind of tell you what a particular driver and crew chief are doing. Right. As far as changes to the car, every time they came in the pit, they would say they dropped a half a pound. You know, and you're talking about 4 tires, much larger and they work in increments of a half a pound. You know, I work in half a pound even on the bikes. It's difficult. The biggest difference for what we deal with is because there's so much influence from rider input. You know, so if you're talking from a beginner level and, you know, coming off the street, getting into track days, is it as critical? No. What I would say, you're better to be a little high in pressures than low, because the lower the pressures, the more the carcass is going to deflect and flex. You know, chances are higher of tearing the tire with low pressure scenarios. So, you know, my advice to anybody, especially if you're getting out on the track day stuff, is start out at the higher realm. You know, if you've got a track day vendor, a tire support vendor, or just, you know, connection with who you're buying your tires from, if they give you a recommendation, you know, I would always start out at the higher side and just see how you feel, because for one person, a pound, they may never notice it. But just because they didn't notice it doesn't mean it didn't have an effect on the tire.
Right.
So my goal, obviously, especially with my newer guys and track day guys, because these things are so expensive, it's kind of a combination of, I want you to get safety first, best performance, but I don't want you to feel like you're getting the shaft because you went and did 2 track days and now all of a sudden your tires are all shredded and you got to buy more tires, right? You know, the goal is to do, through science and data, maximize the value of the investment that you're making, you know, because it's an investment. We spend money, and for that money, we expect a return.
Right.
Our return is performance and longevity. You know, there is those things that they have an effect. So it is important. A pound is important. Whether you feel it or not, that's a whole nother story. You know, but I have plenty of data that supports what we're saying.
So I guess to put this in perspective for probably someone at my level and someone that's doesn't ride as much maybe, and maybe doesn't have access to someone like yourself that can go give them the info they want. How much, if I was going out and I was doing a track day, I hit my first session, well, let's say by the 3rd session. So I'm warmed up. The track's pretty well warmed up. We'll just take everything kind of even across the board.
Right.
Should I change pressures like a pound at a time until I get somewhere that I'm like, oh, I felt that? Or...
So I see what you're saying. So let me put this out there. The way I think about that question and the way that I would handle it personally if I was in your shoes, I've never been one that's afraid to make changes, right? So what I have learned over the years is that even big changes, let's say we were going 4 or 5 PSI, right? Let's say you started out. So, you know, I think with the newer compounds of Dunlops, I know you guys are running higher than what the old KR451s were. You know, it was pretty common to be, you know, around, you know, 34, 35 in the front and, you know, 18, 19 in the rear off the warmer.
Yep.
You know, now I think, at least from what we've saw down here with the new R3s, R5s and such, you know, they kind of react a little bit better to a little bit higher than what the old ones did. But let's just say you started out at 25. Now, here's the big caveat. It has to be on the same day, similar track conditions, weather conditions, all that, right? I am not afraid to go out there and start at 25 because I want to start higher than lower. And then I'll do something stupid and I'll go out at 20.
Okay.
Because you're in control of this, right? I don't know where my hand's at. You're in control of whichever one turns the throttle. I'm not used to looking backwards.
All good.
You always have the control of that, you know. But I'm a firm believer in making big swings at first, especially for guys that don't have all the seat time, so you can actually feel a difference. And once you actually physically feel a difference, then you could go back and say, either A, that was positive or negative, you know. And then over time, let's say you like 20. It felt good to you. Then you have to just watch your tire wear and say, is that feeling worth the exacerbated tire wear? Because the tire is going to wear out sooner, right? You know. So there's a lot of variables in there, but don't be afraid to try stuff, man. You know, especially, you know, for the average guy, if you're not looking at getting into competition stuff, though, I would, you know, my first response would be stick with the higher side of the pressure range, because that's just going to give you a little bit better longevity, you know. And let's face it, if you're not getting up to certain paces, even at that higher pressure, you're not at a point where you have to extract the maximum grip out of that tire.
Right.
You know, like you're still not there yet. But you know, some of it's psychological. A lot of it's psychological. You know?
A lot of it.
Yeah. A lot of it.
Yeah.
I mean, I believe that. That's what I think. That was half the reason I went to slicks in the first place, was because I just wanted to feel better. And who knows if I was stickier or any better or whatever, but I can say that I rode faster and harder that year because I was on slicks and I felt like I had this magical tire under me. And I'll stand behind that all day, because I think that if you gain confidence, you're going to be faster, and being faster is going to make you better. So
100%. You know, I 100% I agree with that statement. I live by that statement. I don't care if it's changing the angle of a shift lever on a rear set or a clip on. You know, the more comfortable you feel on the motorcycle, the faster you will go. And the faster you go, the more motivation you will have to go faster. You know, so yeah, it's built, and that's the downside of being so expensive, because it's addicting. It really can be addicting, you know. And but I also think it's, you know, we get up every day. We've educated ourselves from the time we were wee lads in you know, some higher education and stuff, and we are, you know, our first primary thing is to take care of ourselves. We go get a job, we make money, and then, you know, generally a handful of us throughout society are fortunate enough to find a hobby and a passion. And, you know, the old saying is true. You can make all the money in the world, but you can't take it with you. You know, so I try to look at the cost and the expense and the justification of that expense in a different manner than I think most. It's like I put my safety first. You know, I try to put my safety first and my performance first. And if it costs me an extra $400 or whatever the cost is that I didn't anticipate spending, I will still do that now, long before I will take the risk. And then it's just, you know, as long as you keep building the confidence, as you start getting faster, you learn more things, because there's certain things that your body will react to at different speeds, because you visually see things and your brain processes them different at one speed to another. You know, if you're driving 45 miles around the racetrack, it's la-di-da-di-da, right? Anybody can do that. You know, you get into a track day or a race mode where you're, you know, anywhere between 130 and 180, depending on the bike and the track, you know, that's a whole different world. You don't ride the same. You just don't. So I think building on that comfortability level is key, you know, for anybody.
I got a really good question. How important is it on a motorcycle to balance your tire, or your wheel rather?
Front, I'm pretty adamant about it.
Okay.
You know, a lot of it depends on pace, you know, because you're unless the wheel's like way out of balance, you generally are not going to feel anything transmitted to the bars until you're, you know, 110, 120 plus. But fronts, I'm very adamant about. Rears, quite honestly, you know, I don't really pay too much attention to, and the reason why is that, at least for what we're doing, like in the like the competition stuff, right? Man, these tires got so much grip, and the bike's got so much power. I can line up a tire. You know, most of the tires, a lot of the tires have like little balancing dots on the sidewall, and we use that. We'll line those with the valve stem, which will typically reduce the amount of weights that we have to put on the wheel, right? It never fails. You know, I put a rear tire on the bike, and those things have so much grip, and the bikes have so much power, they just spin on the wheel. You know, so I can spin the wheel weights and the time, and I do it, you know, especially for my track day guys, you know, because they're a little more in their head about it, you know. But for a lot of the guys, I got guys that say, you know, don't worry about it. Me personally, I don't worry about a rear, because I know after 3 laps, the tires moved. So what's the point?
Yeah, I never actually thought about that.
Well, when you eat through them that fast, the weight of the tire is changing.
Yeah, it is. And, the biggest thing about the balancing is just vibration and stuff, right? So most of your vibration you're going to feel on the front anyway, because that's what's connected to your handlebars.
Right.
I mean, to feel a rear wheel vibration, man, that's more than likely, if you're feeling vibration from a rear wheel, the wheel is bent. Something's not right. And I don't care if you're on R3 all the way up to a Ducati, whatever they make. That's just the facts. I mean, it's science. It is what it is.
I think that's good to hear, because I think the only time my rear tire gets balanced is when you guys do it for me.
Yeah. And I've found this funny too, because I've ran across guys that, they come because I'm available, right? They'll take advantage of it while I'm at the track or whatever. And they'll come back and ask, well, did you balance the tire? Yeah, I balanced the tire. Or no, I didn't, depending on what the scenario is, right? But then there's some of them that I know, because I deal with their wheels all the time.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
So like, I know these guys. And so I could tell, like, if they bring me a wheel and it's been in between rounds, they've put a new tire on the wheel to go practice somewhere at a track day or a member day, and then I see them again at the racetrack, and it's a new tire, but the same weights are on it. So I'm like, you're gonna give me and ask me if I balance it, but yet you do this. I'm like, come on, guys, let's be realistic about stuff. But again, some of that still goes back to the psychology of the sport. It's if it's in your head, and the reality is, I don't really think it matters much to balance a rear wheel. But if you want me to do it, by God, I'm gonna do it.
Right.
So
got it. Easy day.
So in your line of work, how do you decide? I mean, this is such a simple, stupid question, probably, but how do you decide how many tires to take to whatever event you're going to?
No, that is not a simple, stupid question. That is a very complicated question.
That's his whole. That's like 90% of his job. Brain power goes to that. You just really offended him.
Yeah, no, it's really not. I guess the long and short of it is, first and foremost, there's only so much room in the trailer, right? So I mean, physically, I can only take so with me at one time. But for me, I use an inventory system. Now, this will be the first year that will be of benefit to me. But last year when I started, I tracked. So at least all of my racers, and quite a few of the repeat track day guys, we have them in the system. So as I made my first order going into this system, I looked at who bought what this time, this track, last year. And then you kind of base it on that. I think a lot of it is repetition once you're doing it for a while, which obviously this is all new for me. So I'm trying to use more data and try to get to that realm faster than my predecessor. But there, once you deal with the same number of riders over and over again, you kind of know what bikes they're running, what compounds they're using. You kind of get an idea of how many they buy a weekend or what at, and you can. It's an educated guess, and it's really that. It's an educated guess. I mean, I won't sit here and say that I've nailed it 100% last year. There was a couple of times where I was either out of a specific, not necessarily a specific size that would work on a bike, but there was a couple of times where I had a compound that a client wanted, and I was like, shoot, sorry, man, I sold my last one. And I would do the Okie dance. I would go to this person and say, hey, I just sold you that, but do you really need it? Because I got this guy. And that's just trying to do the best that I can for my customers. But it's educated guess.
Second part of that, a lot of times for track days, especially around here when it starts to get to be the end of the year, you guys don't want to be stuck with a lot of inventory either going into the cold months.
Right.
So they'll ask, or they'll let us know that we should be reaching out and telling you guys, hey, I'm going to be there. I plan on using 5 fronts and 6 rears.
Right.
Is that helpful to you?
Absolutely. I mean, yeah, in a perfect world, that would be nice. If I had, I guess you could kind of just label that a pre-order, right? You know, if a guy came in and just emailed me, uh, it's nice in theory, but the reality of it is, you know, at least for me, when I make an order, you know, I'm usually 10 to 14 days out, right? So the only way that would really work 100% is if everybody gave me, you know, 2 weeks prior to an event, which you
That
guys
ain't gonna
know,
happen in our
it
world.
never happens. You know, we race motorcycles and ride motorcycles. It's like, oh, we're getting off tonight, and I still got to change the oil and everything.
Yeah.
You know, and that's the world we live in. So, you know, we do our best to try to combat it. My situation's a little bit different being down here where I'm at because we ride pretty much year round. So I don't. From a business side of it, yes, your statement's still true. I mean, I didn't want to be sitting on a full load of tires going in the off season. But for me to house some inventory through our off months is not uncommon. You know, we're still selling stuff. You know, guys doing practice days, member days, and things like that. And heck, even our track day stuff. I mean, we got our first track day this coming weekend, so middle of February, and our last one with that same group is December 1st.
Wow.
But yeah, so we don't really have
I'm
much
jealous.
off time. Yeah, living in the South has its benefits. Let me tell you. At least from a motorcycle standpoint. I don't know about much else, but from a motorcycle standpoint, it has its benefits. So, but yeah, you just make the best possible decision you can with the information that's in front of you.
Being a vendor, there's the business side of it, the money side of it. Obviously, having inventory that you don't sell is lost money. But then there's the other side of it, the emotional side and the family of the track. Just kind of curious, would just personal question, opinion based here, but would you rather come out of a season with more inventory, but you're able to help everyone every day, never didn't have what someone needed? Or would you rather kind of ride that fine line and maybe a couple people don't quite get what they want?
I'd rather find a fine line.
Okay.
To be honest with you, from a business standpoint, because I take that question and that my answer relates to flying in an airplane. You know, they always give you the safety features first, and they tell you the thing's going to drop out, and if you have small children, put your mask on before you do them. The reason being, if you can't breathe and you're dead, you can't help your child. So from a financial standpoint, you know, to be solvent in business and being able to be back for the next season, you know, I don't want to short anybody, but if I had to make a hard choice, that would be the route that I would go. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, short one person or short the whole
yes.
the whole group.
Yeah. Yeah. Because it's crazy because it's not really as simple as it seems. You know, it's like if I don't make it, you know, that's a whole transitional thing. There's a lot of operation, a lot of moving parts behind the scenes that nobody sees. They just think we show up with a trailer and, you know, we put tires on your wheels and off you go. Man, there's a lot of stuff that goes on behind the scenes. And, you know, if something happened to me or we couldn't do it, you know, it's like Pirelli, you know, either I myself or probably a combination of the two, I would assume, you know, we would have to find a suitable, you know, not just anybody, you know, somebody that cares, that's passionate about it, that's going to take care of the customers and do it, you know, in the proper manner that Pirelli's comfortable with.
Right.
So, and let's face it, you know, do you know of anybody that you at a drop of a hat would just give up their life and say, I'm going to travel around and work, you know, 37 weekends out of a year?
Yeah, nah, not really.
Yeah. So it's easy to just think that we just do what we do. And in some regards, the labor side of it, yeah, it's pretty simple. But, you know, there's a lot of moving parts. You got to deal with upkeep and maintenance on equipment and getting back and forth from where I'm at to any particular individual track, you know. So if I have a blowout or something like that, yeah, so there's a lot, just like any business. So I think, you know, we try to make the best decisions financially that are going to make sure that we can be around to provide the service to our guys that we want to provide, you know, and for me, that's huge. You know, I'm a very service oriented person. So
did you guys see it relates? Did you see what happened at Chuckwalla? Not this last round, but the round before?
I did not. I was actually supposed to be there and competing, but it didn't work out for me that way. But
so it got canceled for rain.
Okay.
Yeah.
And everybody was saying, you guys don't race in the rain? But what actually happened is, no, they don't normally race in the rain. So when it started raining, everybody ran to you guys and said, I need rain tires. And they didn't have enough for even a majority of the people.
Correct.
So it was not, they deemed it wasn't competitive. If everybody couldn't have rain tires,
safe. Yeah. So I have a statement for you. Your lack of planning does not constitute an emergency on my part.
Yep.
And what I mean by that is you go back to the first statement that I talked about. There's only so much room in the trailer, right? I'm at a club level. I'm not showing up with, I'm in a 41-foot bus and a 30-foot trailer, which is still a lot of trailer, but I don't have an 18-wheeler full of.
I was gonna say you're not Moto America.
Yeah, this is not Moto America, right? This is at a club level, and our club level is pretty serious. So with that being said, and I had a couple of issues with some guys this past season where they look at me and I kind of pulled a fast or a joke on them. I was like, well, I don't have any rain tires because, the weather was changing. And they're like, what do you mean you don't have any rain tires? I was like, well, I've only got so much room in the trailer. That there's some truth behind that. Now, I had enough to take care of those guys at that particular moment. But I made the point, I used that to make a point to them going, if it does not rain and I don't have enough slicks, you're going to be mad at me.
Mm-hmm.
If it starts to rain and I don't have rain tires, you're going to be mad at me. So I just look at the statistics and go, we typically don't get a whole lot of rain where I'm at, and I don't sell a whole lot of rain tires. As a matter of fact, I changed my system to where I put it out to all of my guys. If you want rain tires this season, you need to order them and they'll be in on my next order. It goes back to the business part that we just discussed too. There's an inventory side of that too. I mean, that's a lot of capital for me to tie up on a specific tire that may or may not ever get sold. And then you start running into date problems.
Yep.
I've seen rain tires where, they were 5 years old, brand new, but 5 years old because the opportunity to need them didn't present itself in 5 years.
Right.
So now I'm looking at a safety factor. I don't care if the tire's brand new, it's 5 years old. So to me, I'm going to chunk it. So as a business person, I can't afford to sit there and just throw out money.
Right.
So when everybody, I think deep down in their heart, especially if it comes to whether it's track day or racing, I think we all individually know within ourselves, if it rains, am I going to be the guy that will go ride in the rain? Most track day guys are not.
Right.
Just not. Right.
Yeah.
Even if they have rains, they're not. Race population, at least where I'm at, probably less than half. So if you fall into those two categories, if it rains, I paid for my track time, I'm going to go ride. So buy a set of rain tires and have them with you. That's my advice.
There you go. Yeah. I'll say, I think it depends a lot on where you're from too. Because there's definitely some parts of the country where it rains more often, and most of the people up there are just, yep, we're ready for it. We're used to it. That's what we're going to do. My biggest holdback is usually that it's only going to rain for the first hour or the first session. So even if I had rain tires, I don't know that I would waste the time swapping tires over and going when I'm cold and wet anyway. I might as well just hang out in the bus and wait it out for an hour,
And that's really what it's all about, man. You just got to look yourself in the mirror and be honest with yourself. You know who you are.
Mm-hmm.
I know who I am. When I first started out, heck yeah, I was out in the rain. It was miserable. Hated it, but I had good success in it. And now, it's not worth the effort of having to dry a suit and be all sopping wet and all. Like, it's but I've done this for so many years, so a lot of those you experience once or twice and you kind of get your kicks, and then you I think everything evolves, right? And if you're, and that's with anything in life, but if you're in something, a hobby, particularly long enough, you will also evolve, and how you feel about it yesterday may not be the same as how you feel about it tomorrow. But what is the same is you still are passionate about it and you love it, right? It's just how you go about it and how you go about it tomorrow.
Right.
Some of that will change over time, but just be honest with yourself. It's the same thing with guys that come in. Here's a huge pet peeve. Huge pet peeve. Oh, I crashed and I don't know what happened. Well, the bike didn't crash itself. I pretty much promise you that, unless you had a tire failure or a chain failure or an engine blow that leaked, it was fluid on it, or you ran across some fluid on the track. The bike didn't crash itself. So, ironically enough, you can hop off a motorcycle at anything over 20 miles an hour, and that joker will continue to stay upright and go straight for quite some time. So the bike didn't crash itself. If you can't be honest with yourself in this sport, then you're destined for a lot of pain, a lot of money spent, and a lot of failure. And that's just kind of the way it is. You don't have to be out there and be the fastest guy. You just got to be honest with yourself and know where your limits are and what you're comfortable with, and have fun. We're supposed to be doing this for fun, right?
Yeah.
I think.
Yeah, that's why I do it. I'm not making any money doing it, that's for sure. So
I certainly ain't making any money doing it. So
that's about all I got, and I do actually have to get to work here kind of soon.
Gotta go make money. Gotta go make the donut.
I said I would feel for you, but I got to go to work too. I got to load 300 something tires. So
I don't know if I'd rather do that or do what I'm doing, but work is work. So, but hey, it's been awesome talking with you, learning. I think I definitely learned something. I don't know about Cole up there. He's kind of a genius. So
he could probably teach me a thing or three.
There you go. I don't think so. I've learned some stuff.
Well, that's good. That's good.
I got to play this. I got to play this back to Mama so I can get them tires in the house. That's what I learned.
There you go.
There you go. Big things. So my big key takeaways today, I'm going to say, if you're cold, they're cold, bring them inside.
Yep.
I'm going to say, take care of your vendors, because at the end of the day, they take care of you.
100%.
And you're not the only one out there. They're taking care of all of us. So take care of them. And that being said, if you're in the South Central area, check out Chris Hamlett, Pirelli dealer. He's your guy. I think he just offered your help to just about everyone out there. So bring your questions to him and he'll answer them.
Yeah, feel free. I mean, you can hit me up. I don't know. I'm not the hugest thing in the social media stuff. We have Facebook and Instagram. I think it's scrcracing.com is our website, and I think all the other stuff links to that too. But if you guys have any questions, feel free to reach out to me. Like I said, I'm just a lover and a believer in the sport, and just want to do my part to help keep it going and keep everybody as safe as I can and help you reach the maximum potential. So.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, once again, thanks again for being here. And I'll say to the people listening, click the subscribe button down below. Go check out Chris Hamlett. And if you're not going to the track yet, you should go to the track.
Yeah, definitely. It's fun. You should try it at least once. Yeah. Absolutely. All right, Cole, Easton, I appreciate the time. Thank you so much for having me. I've enjoyed it. And, maybe we can do this again sometime soon.
Yeah.
That'd be great. Thanks for coming on.